Hey, what's good today, fellas? I'm gonna give you guys my Rebirth top 5 SMGs y'all should be using, and these are gonna be without a doubt the most dominant setups on Rebirth, period. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Y'all gonna be dominating here on Rebirth Island. Before any farther into the video, I want to give a shout out to the Noti Gang. If y'all want to be featured in a future video, make sure y'all drop a like on this one, subscribe, all notifications turned on. Make sure you guys comment down below Noti Gang, and also watch the video all the way through. That being said, let's jump into these setups. Okay, so my first gun here is gonna be the Modern Warfare MP5. We absolutely love this thing. I see a lot of people debating between the Modern Warfare MP5, the Cold War MP5. I showed you guys that one last time here in another different top 5, so I want to make sure I cover the Modern Warfare MP5 and the best build possible you guys can get with it, as this thing is unbelievably good. Great hipfire accuracy, solid magazine count. I mean, it's just really the jack of all trades here when it comes to an SMG. It's just awesome. So let's hop into a build for this thing. First thing on this is actually going to be, we're going to skip that muzzle category. We're going to go straight into the barrel, and we're going to throw the monolithic integral suppressor here for sound suppression and bullet velocity. We absolutely love using this thing. You guys can definitely go to run the mono suppressor on the end of the gun. It's not going to make that much of a difference, to be honest. It's just really going to be kind of like a personal preference when it comes down to visuals. That's just kind of really about it. It's not going to be a game changer in any sort of way. So, I mean, if someone's trying to tell you otherwise, I mean, it's just really not going to do that much of a difference. I personally have had great success using both the monolithic integral versus the one on the end of the gun in the muzzle category. That's that. In the underbarrel section, we're going to go for the Merc foregrip here for recoil control and hipfire accuracy. The Modern Warfare MP5 has incredible hipfire accuracy, so we're trying to use that to our advantage as much as possible, as it's not like it's going to have crazy ADS strafe speed. So in order to kind of combat the fact that we're not going to have crazy aim down sight strafe speed, we're going to try to be able to utilize our hipfire accuracy, you know, to the best of our ability, which is going to be that Merc foregrip. But we're not going to go straight for a crazy hipfire build, because that one's going to be a little bit slow in the reload, so we have to kind of counteract that a little bit. But the Merc foregrip is going to be great for this. After that, in the magazine section, we got the 45 round mag here for magazine ammo capacity. This is the basic ammunition type that this gun comes with. I've seen people try to run the 10mm auto 30 round, and yes, it does increase your damage and your range, but it's not nearly as beneficial as you would think. I've tried this out plenty of times. Me and the boys have tested this out. We've gone through, we've done so many different variations of Modern Warfare MP5 setups. We've definitely found that every single time the 45 round mag is definitely going to be the way to go. So don't mess around with this 10mm one. It's just not it. I mean, it just really isn't. It doesn't matter for playing solos on like How Dare or something. It's just not it. After that, though, we're going to go down here to the stock section, and we're going to run the FTAC collapsible. This is going to give us better movement speed and ADS speed. It says it's negatively going to impact your recoil control and aiming stability, but don't worry about that too much, because the Merc foregrip helps out with your recoil control quite significantly, and it's also not going to be too much on the edge of that aiming stability. You're not going to really feel that too much there, but you're just going to get a lot of really great benefits out of this FTAC collapsible. And then what we're going to replace, what we'd probably put on like a laser sight, is going to be sleight of hand. And the reason we're running sleight of hand here instead of something like a laser is just because that this gun has kind of a slow reload speed, so we're trying to kind of bolster that as much as possible. And specifically on Rebirth Island here, this sleight of hand is going to come in very useful, just because you're running into a lot of people usually very fast and, like, you know, in quick succession. So having sleight of hand is going to be hugely beneficial on this gun. This is my full setup for this thing. Hope you all enjoy the Modern Warfare MP5. I absolutely love it. Hope y'all enjoy this build. Definitely give it a shot. Next up on my list here is going to be the Black Ops Cold War MAC-10. We absolutely love the MAC-10 here. It's got very little recoil when it comes down to it. I mean, you have the great when you have the right build for it, it's gonna have very little recoil. It's got a pretty cool variant here as well, and I mean, it's just got a pretty solid magazine ammo capacity of like about 50+ rounds, which is definitely something we absolutely love here when it comes down to an SMG. Having that 40+ rounds in that magazine is hugely beneficial. So let's give you guys a setup here for the MAC-10. Okay, so first thing in here is going to be the agency suppressor in the muzzle category. We're going to run this here instead of the regular sound suppressor, as the agency is just 100% the way to go for pretty much a large majority, if not 99% of these Black Ops Cold War guns. There may be like one exception every now and again, but the agency is definitely the way to go. After that, in the barrel section, we are to be using the 5.9 Task Force barrel for effective damage range, bullet velocity, and strafe speed. We love the Task Force barrel in this gun. This is just the most effective one by far, and I would not recommend for you guys to use anything else. There's just basically not a better barrel out there besides the Task Force when it comes down to this gun. Genuinely speaking, I mean, I only ever used this, and we only switched out pretty much when the barrels were glitched a long while back. Those of you guys remember that back in the Verdansk days, I'm sure y'all, there's a few of you out there that remember that, where everything just did not make sense. Besides back then, we pretty much always exclusively used the Task Force, so run that on this gun. Out in the underbarrel section, we got the bruiser grip here for movement speed and hipfire accuracy. I really like having the bruiser grip on my SMGs, especially if I don't want to be able to use something like the Tiger Team Spotlight. This is kind of like my go-to thing in terms of swapping something out, though you can definitely use the Tiger Team if you really want to and swap out the bruiser grip for that, but I really like the bruiser in that place. Outside in the magazine section, we have the Snag 53 round drum here for the increased ammo capacity. I don't find there to be a benefit to running the Salvo 53 round fast mag. I've really never have, so that's the reason we pretty much always exclusively run the 53 round drum. There's just no real reason for you to use anything else. It just doesn't make sense. Then for our last attachment here, we got the Raider stock for ADS-fire move speed, aim, walking movement speed, and sprint to fire time. Overall, this is a really great attachment, increasing your mobility here in terms of like that close quarters effectiveness. Be able to ADS and be able to move around pretty quickly is definitely a really solid thing when it comes to being able to survive gunfights in Warzone. So the Raider stock is for sure going to help you out with that. But that's my full build here for this Mac 10. Hope you all enjoyed this one. Really like using this thing, and it's just super good. For our third SMG up, we're gonna be taking a look at the Vanguard Welgun. This thing is incredible, very highly versatile, low recoil. I almost just kind of stumbled over my words there, but very low recoil. I mean, it's got a great magazine, ammo capacity, mobility is off the charts. I mean, you can't really ask for a heck of a lot more, maybe besides a tad bit bigger of a magazine, but overall this build here is amazing. So let's give you guys a solid setup for it. Okay, so our first thing on this gun here is gonna be that recoil booster. This is gonna drastically help our TTK out. You pretty much run this on a large majority of the Vanguard SMGs. You don't really ever run a silencer, just because why run a silencer when you can increase your TTK quite significantly, aka pretty much making it so that you take people out faster, not like making it so that it takes more shots to take somebody out. You want to be able to take people out faster, so the recoil booster is the way to go. After that, though, in the barrel section, we have the 320mm SA shrouded barrel. This is going to help out with our recoil quite a bit. It's going to make it a lot more of a laser beam than you pretty much would think so. After that, in the underbarrel section, we have the Mark VI skeletal, but if you do not want to run the skeletal, you can go ahead and run the M1941 hand stop. I kind of switch back and forth between the two depending on what I'm feeling like, and to be honest, you really can have good success with both of them. So between the hand stop or the skeletal, either or is going to work. You're just going to get, of course, ADS speed out of this one and more recoil control and hipfire accuracy out of this one. That's just kind of like, you know, how it is. I mean, I should say recoil control and accuracy, not hipfire accuracy. That's the con, hipfire accuracy, but you guys get the point. After that, though, in the magazine section, we're using the 7.62 Gorenko 40-round magazine. This says it's going to negatively, impact your damage, bullet penetration, bullet velocity, and range. But overall, this ammo type right here is unbelievably beneficial to run because that fire rate, movement speed, recoil control, and accuracy, these far outweigh the negatives you're going to get with this gun, this magazine. So I'd highly recommend for y'all to run the Gorenko instead of pretty much anything else in here. After that, though, in the ammunition type, we're gonna run the hollow point for increased limb damage. You definitely don't want to run incendiary anymore, just because incendiary, it just causes like an actual it was like a 10 to 15% damage reduction in your overall damage of your gun. So you definitely do not want to do that. You want to run the hollow point, otherwise your gun's going to be hitting a lot less hard if you're running incendiary versus hollow point. It's just kind of one of those things. It used to be good, pre-patch, but now the hollow point's the way to go, or frangible depending on the gun. After that, though, in the rear grip section, we have the pine tar grip here for recoil control and hipfire accuracy. I also, at some points when I'm not running, let's say, the skeletal, I have switched out the pine tar for something like the fabric grip here, because this is going to be better for my mobility. But sometimes I've run the fabric grip and the skeletal, it kind of seems to bounce around a little bit too much. So I like to kind of combat that and run the pine tar here, and that's pretty solid for me. But after that, though, in the optic section, we're on the slate reflector here. This is going to be really solid, and I wouldn't really recommend running anything else. Even the iron sights aren't all that great on this gun. I just believe that you're going to have a much better time using this weapon if you have the slate reflector on it instead of something else. Or maybe you use like whatever it is, the Night Arm Model 47, as that's going to work out pretty solid as well. But between the two red dots, that's just kind of personal preference at that point. For our last attachment here, we have the SA-43 folding stock. This is going to be super great for our overall mobility on this gun. I like this, and I don't really feel like I have any cons, to be honest, with it. It just feels like it's so much of a laser. I don't feel like I lose flinch resistance or recoil recovery. I just don't really ever see that. And also because we have that Gorenko mag, you're not really going to feel any sort of that recoil recovery, disadvantage. So the folding stock is just kind of the way to go for this gun. And then for our last stuff here, we have the acrobatic perk for movement speed and sprinting move speed. And of course, then perk 2, we have quick for sprint speed. Overall, this is a great build here for this gun. Super good. I absolutely love the Welgun. Probably like one of my top 2 SMGs to use right now, between this and another one, which we'll get to here a little bit later in the video. Well, I guess speaking of my other SMG that I really like using, we're going to be talking about the Vanguard Owen Gun. This is probably the #1 SMG for y'all to be using here on Rebirth Island, or just in, you know, Warzone in general. This thing's got a crazy high magazine ammo capacity, very easy to use. The only downside is that magazine that's going to be a little bit in your way. Otherwise, this gun would undoubtedly be the most overpowered SMG in Warzone, just purely because of all its different benefits. That magazine is probably the only thing holding it back in that regard. So let's give you guys a setup for this gun. Okay, first thing here, like always, the recoil booster. Don't want to explain this one again. I talked to you guys about this here for that previous gun. It does the exact same thing here for the Owen Gun. After that, in the barrel section, we have the Gawain 188mm shrouded barrel. I was pretty much using the Hawkinson beforehand, but I pretty much switched over from the Hawkinson to the Gawain, and I have not looked back. This thing is unbelievably effective, and I really, really like it over the Hawkinson or even the 142 rapid barrel. I really suggest you guys use the Gawain exclusively. After that, in the underbarrel section, you have the Mark V Ice Skeletal. You guys can run this, or like the other gun, the other previous weapon, you guys can run the M1941 hand stop. And that's just pretty much like you can switch back and forth between the two. What do you feel better with? What is going to be better for your overall recoil control? I mean, I personally can get away with running the skeletal, but I know some people say that on console they can't use that. You know, they're not going to be able to use the exact same build, so they run with the hand stop for a little bit more recoil control to make the gun a little less bouncy. I completely understand that. It's just a little bit personal preference at the end of the day. For our magazine section, we have the 7.62 Gorenko 72 round drum. This is pretty much the same sort of deal with the Welgun, is that the Gorenko is going to be a lot more beneficial because it's going to increase your fire rate. And overall, a lot of these cons don't really end up making that much sense, or they really don't impact you all that much. I would just recommend to run the Gorenko 72 and pretty much just call it a day at this. I mean, it's unbelievably effective, and I wouldn't use something that's not the most effective way to use the gun in Warzone. I just wouldn't. I want to be able to use the most overpowered stuff, and for me, the Gorenko 72 is the most OP, you know, magazine attachment. For ammunition type, we got hollow point here for increased limb damage. Of course, like I said, you can run hollow point or frangible, but sometimes it feels like hollow point is a little bit better over frangible. Sometimes you can't really feel like frangible is working. I don't really know. I don't really want to go test that out. I'd rather use something that I know is guaranteed going to work, and hollow point is that. After that, in the rear grip section, you got a fabric grip here. This is overall just going to be a top tier mobility attachment in the rear grip section, so I just recommend for you guys to run this. Next up in the optic section, though, we have the slate reflector. This is going to be my preference. I have seen some other people go down here and run something like the slate 2.5 times. I personally do not like the slate 2.5 times. I just believe it's a little bit weird. This is on the ground loot weapon for those of you guys that want some reference, but I just do not like it all that much. I can deal with it for ground loot, but I don't want to use it on an actual class. I'd much rather to use the regular red dot. I just like the way it interacts when I bring out my gun. I just do not prefer the slate 2.5 times. It's just, you know, it's one of those things. For our last attachment here, and before we get into the perks, we have the remove stock. This is going to be incredible for overall mobility, and I just think this is the top tier one in this category. And then for our last perks here, we have acrobatic movement speed, sprinting movement speed. Gonna make us more agile, more mobile. That's why you bring out the SMG when you're sprinting around. And then for our last perk, though, we have quick for sprint speed, and this is just gonna be the way to go here. This is a meta setup, definitely the best one out there for the Owen Gun. I absolutely love this thing. Super good. I mean, it's just an absolute tank. With 72 rounds in that magazine, you can take out full squads before you have to reload. Then our last gun here before we end off this top 5, this is going to be the OTS-9. This thing is incredible here. This is going to be a tried and true setup for this weapon. I really like this gun still. I've seen a large variety of people using different setups. I gave you guys a different one in a more previous video, but this is going to be an also one that works really well. I've used recently, and it's still unbelievably effective. So let's get into a setup here for the OTS-9. First thing in the muzzle category is going to be that groove suppressor. Obviously, we want to be able to control that recoil. This is just the best one out there. Like I said, 99% of those Cold War weapons, you want to use the groove suppressor on, or the agency, whatever it may be for that specific weapon. The groove is just going to be the one for this gun. After that, in the barrel section, we have the Task Force barrel here for effective damage range, bullet velocity, and strafe speed. This is like, pretty much like I talked about for the MAC-10. We've always used the Task Force barrel on this gun. There's just no real reason to use any of this other stuff. It just doesn't really make sense. So use the Task Force barrel exclusively. After that, in the underbarrel section, the bruiser grip here, movement speed and hipfire accuracy. Gotta love this thing. I mean, the bruiser grip is just really solid for a movement attachment on those Cold War SMGs, and I kind of prefer this over the Tiger Team Spotlight nowadays. And then for our magazine, we have the VDV 40 round fast mag, ammo capacity, and reload quickness. Gotta love this. I mean, this is just really solid here, and I've never ran anything else I do kind of say that, I mean, the spec stat is 40. If you ever picked up the OTS line off ground loot, you'll know that the overall reload speed when it doesn't have the fast mag on here is pretty chalked. It's really slow. So that's the reason we always run the fast mag no matter what. You just kind of have to do it at this point. And then for our last attachment here to round out this build, we have the KGB skeletal stock, ADS fire movement speed, aim, walking movement speed, and sprint to fire time. This is a meta build right now for the OTS 9. Hope y'all enjoyed this build. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, give it a like, subscribe if you are brand new, turn on those post notifications, and just turn on notifications. Don't be Randy, and I'm out. Peace.